The 2023 NFL Draft is officially this week. Gino and I today are going to do a predictive first-round mock draft. And also, Jalen Hurts had his introductory press conference today after his contract extension was signed. Could he potentially be the greatest Eagles quarterback of all time when it's all said and done? All that and more on this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. As I mentioned, it is draft week. I cannot believe it. This Thursday, the Eagles will be on the clock eventually at number 10 overall and 30. Gino and I are going to be live for you on our draft show. It's year 5 of Gino and I doing the draft show live on day 1 of the NFL draft. You can find that on our YouTube channel. You can find it on both of our Twitter accounts that are going to be streaming it at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE. We've got live Locked On content as well throughout the channel. Birds do, as we've mentioned a few times on this podcast, general manager Howie Roseman is predictably unpredictable. And that's really the entirety of the NFL draft. You know, today's mock draft Monday, and we're going to try to run through a predictive 31 pick mock draft. But who really knows? I mean, who thought Clelin Ferrell was going to be the first pick? Who thought the Eagles were going to take Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson? Who thought, even going way back, that they were going to take Marcus Smith? I mean, there's just been so many moments in the draft where every year you're like, whoa. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks every single season, it's like they took Rashad Penny, didn't see that coming. They took LJ Collier, or the Patriots last year took, Cole Strange. Every single year there's at least a couple selections where you're like, I wouldn't have picked that in a million years. Today we're going to try to be predictive to see where the Eagles could be faced with certain situations at 10 and 30 and what calls that they could make. But again, embrace the unpredictability. One thing that we can predict and we know now for certain is that the Eagles have their quarterback of the future. Jalen Hurts put pen to paper last week, signing that massive 5-year deal where, well, today he did finally sit down with the media. His press conference after the contract, joined by Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, Hurts' family, players showed up, Devontae Smith, Greg Ward. It was an awesome, Quez Watkins as well. It was just an awesome celebration this morning of something that I didn't think we'd see coming again in a long time, is another press conference about a quarterback getting a big contract. You know, I actually went back and watched the press conference with Wentz after 2018. You're like, man, I know we've said it a million times in the show, but I cannot believe the way things have went over the last 5 years. It's why I love covering the Eagles, because there have just been so many insane stories, and the way this timeline has went is as crazy as the MCU, right? With what Marvel's trying to do right now. That really does feel like the Philadelphia Eagles. And Jalen had some awesome one-liners again today. You know, he is just a walking mixtape when it comes to his quotes. And the one I loved was, money's great, but championships are better. And that really was the theme of today, is that Jalen, although this is an awesome celebration of his accomplishments and what he has overcome in his career, he is not satisfied, and he wants to be at a press conference where you see the Super Bowl championship banner behind him, and he's got the hat on, he's got the ring. That's what he's gunning for. He even talked about it today. One of the press conference questions from one of the reporters was about why, since some quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson last year, Lamar Jackson, are seeking fully guaranteed deals, why he didn't try for that kind of structure with Philadelphia. Jalen says it's really important for him to keep the current core together and to make sure that Roseman has flexibility to continue to build around Hurts, because Jalen, you know, every player says that winning is the priority, but for Jalen Hurts, you know that he's authentic when he says that. And so he is a special kid. And this story, as Lurie and Roseman said, the career arc of Jalen Hurts is only beginning right now. He's only 24 years old, and that's the crazy part. I actually thought about it today, you know, watching this press conference and just thinking every time he says something, I'm like, man, he gets it. He understands, and for somebody that's 24 years old, you'd think this guy is 34. I mean, he talks like a complete veteran that has it all figured out. And so obviously you're getting ahead of yourself with this question, but man, I would not be surprised when it's all said and done, and this is crazy for me to say considering where I was with Jalen just a year ago, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hurts ends up becoming the greatest Eagles quarterback of all time. I really wouldn't. I mean, Donovan McNabb, he's got the longest run of playoff success in Eagles history with how many conference championships he was at and how many records he broke and the consistency of winning over a decade-long span, making it to a Super Bowl. He's the only quarterback in franchise history to have his jersey number retired. So obviously McNabb right now has the longest resume of accomplishments with this team at quarterback. And then, of course, Nick Foles has the biggest accomplishment. He's the one with the statue outside the stadium. He's the one that won the Eagles their first Super Bowl in a shootout against the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. Nick Foles is the only Eagles quarterback that won a Super Bowl MVP. He's the guy that raised the Lombardi Trophy. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hurts eventually upends both McNabb and Foles. Just look at his resume already. He's 24 years old, so he could feasibly play another, 16 years with this team? If his health goes right and he does not regress, he's only 24. He already has playoff runs in both starting seasons. He has an MVP runner-up on his resume. He's hung 2 banners at the link already with a division title last year and a conference championship. He maybe had the best Super Bowl performance in a loss ever. It's him and probably Brady in 2017. And he's only likely to get better. I cannot, as we mentioned last week, I cannot see Hurts regressing the way that Carson Wentz did and Michael Vick after he signed that deal in 2011. This roster is loaded for the future. He's the best leader, I think, at the position already the Eagles have ever had, which is crazy to say for a 24-year-old. He's got a great shot. He really does have a great shot of being on the Eagles Mount Rushmore and potentially being the greatest to ever play this position in Philadelphia. I think he really could do it. And you just watch that press conference, and of course you always feel that the kind of optimism, when somebody signs a long-term deal. I felt the same way about Carson Wentz when he signed his deal in 2018, and I'm sure I felt the same way when Michael Vick did the same in 2011. But I don't know, Jalen is just, he's different. He gets it, and he is wired in a different way where I think he's going to be very good for a long time. And I think this entire city is once again finally just fully behind their QB. And I think he could potentially be the GOAT when it's all said and done. He has the best chance of anybody in a long time. Even Carson Wentz, I would have said that after 2017, but even then he was coming off a major injury and something like the distraction of a backup quarterback winning a Super Bowl behind him. Jalen Hurts, 24, healthy, the accomplishments of the last 2 years, the way his roster is set up, the way he is wired, I could see it. I could totally see it, which is crazy to talk about for sure. But we've come full circle, and it's an awesome story that today we got to celebrate with that press conference. I want to continue to talk NFL draft coming up next. Gino is going to hop on with me to do a predictive 31 pick mock draft. Today on the show, we're going to do picks 1 through 12 to get to the Eagles' first pick. And then tomorrow, we're going to break this up into 2 parts. Tomorrow's picks 13 through 31. So coming up next on the show, the first half of our predictive mock draft right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy done right. I am a big proponent of therapy. I've been doing it now for 4 years, and it really has changed the way that my brain is wired. It really does change the way I go about thinking about things. I think emotionally, that's the big part of where BetterHelp has come in for me, is to not let my emotions control me as much, not let it define who I am. What you think and, how you feel, that doesn't always represent who you are. And I think you got to get to know yourself. And that's a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and we're always changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, which is huge because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp continues to connect with licensed therapists who can take you on the journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you don't feel like the therapist you have is a right fit. I've been doing therapy again now for 4 years. I've had a couple different therapists. Just got to find the right person for you. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. So the Eagles pick at 10 and 30 in the first round. We've done countless 7-round mock drafts already, as they also have a second-round pick. They have a third, 2 7s. I imagine at some point they get back into at least one of the rounds on day 3 when it comes to the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. So we've done as many mocks as we can with trade-ups, trade-downs, exploring scenarios. If you take this position here, if you go here, I mean, we have maximized it. That's what I love about Mock Draft Monday. So, Gino, today what I want to do is what we normally do to wrap up Mock Draft Monday every offseason. We do a 32-pick predictive first round. Of course, this year there's one less pick because Miami tried to get Tom Brady last year with the collusion there. They have to forfeit their first rounder on Thursday. But I want to see how we think, and of course, it never is right. I wonder how many people actually hit like a decent amount of like predictive mock draft picks. You know what I mean? It's just so unpredictable to know what's going to happen on Thursday. You think the one I always go back to is 2019. Cleveland Farrell, I thought was a solid, pick 15 to 32 range first round edge rusher, and he goes top 5. So you really never know, but I do like to do this exercise to see where we think teams are going to go and what we might think the Eagles have at 10 and 30.
This is another exercise in how much have you been paying attention, really? Because if you follow breadcrumbs throughout this season, what teams are having a certain position visit on their top 30, who they met with at the combine. I know I always say don't put too much stock into there, but it's like Hansel and Gretel. If you want to find the way to who the pick will be, follow those little breadcrumbs. And you look at FanDuel, look at who is projected to be the top pick, the second pick, Will Levis, a heavy favorite to be the second pick according to FanDuel. You could follow these little trails to where it might take you. But at the end of the day, you get the Cleveland Farrell pick at 4, a whole wrench throws in the system. You don't know what's going to happen after that. And I'm sure something could happen. But there's talk the other day that teams might trade up to 3 to get Paris Johnson Jr., which would be insane. But hey, that's the fun of the NFL, man.
Oh, that's what I love about it. And the Eagles are, and we've said it a few times in the show, predictably unpredictable. So we know normally what positions they like to go for, and we know they like to be aggressive and have their cake and eat it too with, going down a lot of the times, trading down and collecting some picks. So we know we have ideas of what Howie likes to do, but when it comes to the actual player they're going to select and how they do it, no idea. But I like to do this because, again, want to kind of see, at least get a feel for who might be available, and then from there, what decisions the Eagles might make. So I want to focus on day 1 today. So we're going to play the role of the GM for everybody, for Carolina, Houston, Arizona, going down the list, then to Philadelphia at 10 and 30, and see who might be available at 10 and where the Eagles should go with, again, knowing if they want to trade up, trade down, or just sit tight, which rarely happens, but maybe they do. Maybe they want to sit tight and a guy fell right in their lap and they're comfortable taking those guys at the selections they're currently slated at. So, Gino, I think we're going to start this off with the number 1 overall pick, the Carolina Panthers. I think this is one of the easier ones. It wasn't for a while, and again, this is predictive, so not who I would take or you, but who we think they will select, and I think it's going to be Bryce Young.
It has to be at this point, and Vegas says that he's the favorite.
And he canceled all his other meetings with other teams, right?
Outside of Carolina. It just makes too much sense. The Carolina general manager is talking about a whole nutrition program that they have established for him already. Yeah, exactly. You don't put that much information into it. And rightfully so. I think Bryce Young, you want to take away the paradigms of just what a quarterback is, right? I think Alabama has done a good job. Look at Jalen Hurts. I mean, did people really think he was going to be a quarterback? He was answering questions about playing running back at the Senior Bowl just a few months before that 2020 draft. And hey, Bryce Young, kid can sling it. I think Carolina really needs to find not just a quarterback, but somebody that could lead the franchise. Bryce Young makes a ton of sense for them.
Yeah, and I would take Anthony Richardson just because, again, I like to go big or go home, but I really like all 4 of these top prospects. I like Will Levis more than most. I know you don't. I like C.J. Stroud after that Georgia game. I bought in. I like Bryce Young, so I think this is a good pick. And Miles Sanders in the backfield with Bryce Young in Carolina, that's one of the easier selections for sure. I think you will. The good news with the Eagles at pick 10, I think all 4 quarterbacks are going in front of them, which is going to push some prospects down the board. Then you can decide if you want to go trade up and get somebody specific or let somebody fall right in your lap at 10. Or in that way, Gino, also the trade down makes sense at 10 too, because if a lot of these guys fall and you like a lot of them in a very similar tier, then, trading down and collecting some picks might not be bad either. So with Houston, this is an interesting one at 2 because we've heard rumors lately, and again, this is smokescreen lying season, so who knows what people are trying to do, but there's rumors they might only like Bryce Young, and if not, D'Amico Ryans might want a Will Anderson or, Jalen Carter type, Tyree Wilson at the edge. I don't know, man. Trey Lance available? Could the San Fran former defensive coordinator go for Lance? This is a tough one. What are you thinking here?
I mean, FanDuel and Vegas, they're usually pretty spot on, and they have Will Levis as the biggest favorite to be selected of any of the first 10 picks. So it would seem crazy that would be the selection. But at the same time, are you rolling with Davis Mills? Like, why would you ever do that? It makes no sense. I know how good Will Anderson is. I know how good Jalen Carter is. But even taking Levis, you're taking a chance, right? And I think that they should go quarterback. Who knows what Nick Caserio is thinking there? I don't really know what his plan has been over the last couple of years. What do you think they do? I mean, they would have to go Will Anderson.
Quarterback. Right? I mean, I think if they don't go quarterback, it's Anderson. To me, even though you're Houston and you're not set up to be a contender next year, when you're in the top 5, especially in a good quarterback class, and again, maybe they don't like these guys as much as I do or the consensus, but I think you got to strike when you have the opportunity. So for me, I still think they do end up selecting one of these quarterbacks. The Stroud thing's interesting because his agent was the same agent as Deshaun Watson, so there's an interesting relationship there. Anthony Richardson, he's raw. I like him a lot, but I haven't heard anything with him in Houston. Do we go Levis? I don't think it matters, right, who the quarterback is.
Yeah, as long as they go.
Quarterback.
Yeah, go back to that Clellan year, right? We were talking about what's the best case scenario. It's like, okay, the quarterbacks go, and things didn't turn out for the Eagles in the way that they wanted to. And I think they have to go quarterback. You can't sit on your hands with Davis Mills for 3 years. Like, stop trying to sell me something stop trying to sell me a Ferrari, which clearly is a Toyota Camry. Like, just stop.
So I don't know. I mean, at this point with Houston, there really isn't.
Give them Will Levis.
I still think they're gonna. Yeah, I still think they're gonna take one. Will Levis could be. There's always a surprise. That's the one we should predict right there at 2. Will Levis at the 2nd overall pick. We're gonna continue this mock draft predictive in the first round coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. BetterHelp is an awesome tool that Gino and I have both utilized. Therapy is huge. It's really helped us change our perspectives on things in life. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process. It's an ever-continuing journey, especially because we're always growing and changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I've been doing therapy now for 3 or 4 years, had a couple different therapists. So you got to find the right one. BetterHelp will help you find that right match. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. We thank BetterHelp for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast today. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this final mock draft Monday of the 2023 offseason. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers Monday through Friday. Gino and I are doing a final predictive mock draft just in round 1. Pick 1 through 31 to see who could be available for the Eagles at 10 and at 30. So, Gino, we made a couple selections there in segment 1. 2 quarterbacks go off the board to Carolina and Houston, Bryce Young and Will Levis. The Arizona Cardinals here on the clock. I know that they need defensive help badly. They have Jonathan Gannon now at head coach. They probably want a Will Anderson or Jalen Carter type, but to me, there's going to be a team that's trying to get up at 3 to go get a CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson that's on the board. And so I think they're going to move down.
I ultimately do think they're going to move down, but for the exercise, I think you just roll with them taking a defensive player. It makes a lot of sense. And how far are they going to move down? I don't think they're going to go outside of the top 10, in my opinion. I mean, you got to hope that Indy's like, okay, let's move up to 3, get our guy.
I think you're going to see a Niners-Bears type of trade in 2017 where the Colts
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, where they move up to – because, like you said, Arizona's not going to want to move down to 11 with Tennessee, right? But I feel like that just makes the most sense where Indianapolis can go up and guarantee they get one of the guys they want, where they're not left with the final player. Because I just can't see them liking all 4. You know what I mean? Like the Eagles were comfortable in 2016 taking Goff and Wentz.
Right.
But to me – to be comfortable with all 4, I don't know. Teams normally have a guy or 2 that they're set on. So I think we should swap these picks. We will, for the sake of this, we'll just say the Colts have this 3rd pick here. And I think they would go at this point CJ Stroud over Richardson. I don't know. I mean, Steichen, he had Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, so maybe he likes that style of player. Right. But I just think Stroud is probably the better and more complete quarterback prospect right now. And that's, I think the Colts really are seeking that. I don't know if they want a project.
And it makes a bunch of sense with how much their general manager has given up to go and get a quarterback. Like, why not spend a couple more dollars to go up to 3 and get your guy? And they have to. I mean, they've taken the long route about trying to find somebody post Andrew Luck. Go and get somebody for old Shane. Shane, I will support to the ends of the earth. The guy picking at 3, though, I don't know. We might just give him a bag of footballs.
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, where the quarterbacks go to which teams is tough, but I think we do know which spots they are going to get selected.
Definitely.
I think that they're going to go all within at least guaranteed the top 7. So, Gino, the Cardinals moved down here to pick 4. I know there's been some rumors about Wilson over Anderson, but I still think Will Anderson goes off the board first.
Yeah, I mean, don't overthink it. Like, don't be dumb. I would be such a hypocrite of Kayvon Thibodeau last year if I didn't say, like, don't overthink it with Will Anderson, right? Like,
sometimes the draft process is so long that you almost you do overthink and talk yourself out of a player for ticky-tack reasons.
Exactly. Like, Kayvon Thibodeau didn't love football. Like, oh, okay. Like, go look at what he's doing on the football field now. I'll roll with Will Anderson. I think it's a very good pick. I think that they really need that franchise player there, and losing Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt in successive years, that's tough to recover from.
So, Gino, the Seattle
God
Seahawks
help
on the
them
clock
with Jonathan
here.
Gannon there. Sorry.
Right. I agree. The Seattle Seahawks on the clock here at 5. If it was me, I'm going Anthony Richardson and letting him sit behind Geno Smith for a year, and then I'm moving forward. But I don't know. They just signed Geno to a 3-year contract. I think they really would like one of these defensive linemen. Jalen Carter and Tyree Wilson on the board. Do you agree, or do you think they could go quarterback?
It seems to be the sentiment from our good friend Corbin Smith over at Locked On Seahawks that they were probably going to go defensive line. And it would make a lot of sense. Like, Tyree Wilson over Jalen Carter, such a Seattle pick. Like, let's just take the guy that nobody thinks is as good as the other guy because we're Seattle. They've done that time and time again.
That really is the Seahawks, man. I mean, LJ Collier, Rashad Penny in the first round, Jordan Brooks in the second round, which was actually a good one, though. That one actually worked out for the better. Again, sometimes because the consensus believes one thing doesn't mean it's always right. So, I agree with you. I think Tyree Wilson definitely goes in the top 5. And I like Will Anderson just as much, but I get why you'd like Tyree Wilson. He is a legitimate prospect that, man, I would love for the Eagles, but definitely he's not going to sniff that 10th pick. So Jalen Carter continuing to fall, but Gino, I don't think he gets past Detroit here. Another team that has a good, not great quarterback, I would take Richardson, but again, predictive. I think they like where they're at right now with Goff. I think they can compete if they continue to build this roster around him. And I think Dan Campbell would be the one that's comfortable taking Jalen Carter if it wasn't the Eagles.
Right. Talk about somebody that could lead a group of men. Dan Campbell, you don't
that seems like the right
authority,
culture,
right? Yeah, 100%. I mean, outside of the gambling stuff, which was just kind of odd with Jameson Williams and that whole group there, I think Jalen Carter goes into a group where you just invested in Aiden Hutchinson, who is your surefire captain of the future, right? Why not pair another guy in Jalen Carter right next to that guy that's going to lead your franchise? I think that's a good 1-2 punch. Yeah, don't overthink it, Detroit. Like, go and get the best player in this class. There was a couple years where the Jets were sitting at 6 and they like lucked into the best player a couple times. And
right.
I think that's very similar to what Detroit might get.
So, Gino, here with the Raiders, I think this is where Anthony Richardson goes.
Ooh, you think they take him? Go ahead.
Yeah, look, if he falls there at 7, I know they brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, but to me, he's a bridge quarterback now, and I think this is almost a perfect situation for Richardson to come in, and he doesn't have to start right away. Even though I'm comfortable with him doing that, I think the Raiders, if they get a quarterback to fall to 7, I think they should take him.
The alternate reality, Jamarcus Russell, like the guy that has the big arm, that's like a very good leader and a very good person. That's Anthony Richardson. I think whoever gets him, Lou, is going to probably end up with the most talented quarterback in the class in terms of athleticism and raw prowess, man. Like, you look at Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and throw those two guys together in terms of Josh Allen's arm with Jalen Hurts' athleticism. That's Anthony Richardson, right? Like, how should we not love him on this show?
Right, exactly. Atlanta here, Gino, lineman, corner, what are you thinking?
They are the favorite to draft Bijan, which would be insane in my opinion. They do have a lot of holes there. I mean, can you see them taking literally any position this year? Yeah, they have holes everywhere. Wide receiver, I know it's a need, but you invested so much in a pass catcher over the last couple of years. I think you have to stick with defense. I think this is where the first corner does come off the board potentially, or maybe even another defensive lineman, but why not go either Devon Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez, because they're not going to take Bijan Robinson as much as they are favored to take him.
I don't think so either. I think Witherspoon will be CB1 off the board here, so I think Atlanta goes with Witherspoon. Chicago on the clock, and Gino, I think this is probably where the first lineman goes. I think they have to protect Justin Fields better. They added, of course, at wide receiver. You bring in DJ Moore, so you're adding weapons for Fields. I think now here comes the protection. Who they go with, though? Peter Skoronski, maybe Paris Johnson. I would probably say Skoronski, but I'm not 100% sold that teams think he's a long-term tackle.
That's fair. I mean, if you have any questions that you might have to throw him at guard, you might go with Paris Johnson, who has that more length, and it makes a lot of sense. Skoronski makes sense in terms of him being a Chicago guy, being at Northwestern.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I like Paris Johnson, and all the talk has been like he's the belle of the ball in this class. And if a team's willing to trade up to 3 and he's there at 9, like, I think we got to take him.
Yeah, I think Paris Johnson goes at 9 to Chicago. So, Gino, the Eagles on the clock here at 10. And if this is the way the board falls, which it very well could, I myself would love Christian Gonzalez. There's rumors today that the Eagles, an anonymous GM, said they love Nolan Smith, the edge from Georgia. Bijan Robinson, there's been a lot of talk about that last week. So Peter Skoronski, I think in this scenario, maybe you trade down a few spots. I think there's a lot of good options.
I think you should trade down, especially because JSN's still on the board, right? And Tennessee's probably chomping at the bit. Like, we could get JSN. Well, Houston's right there too. They have a big need. And I mean, if you're going to go quarterback, why not double it up? Like, why not find your guy? So let's say they move down to 12. I think that's very smart. You're still going to walk away with potentially the best corner in terms of overall prowess, in my opinion. You could still walk away with one of the top tackles. There's plenty you can do by trading down 2 picks. It's not going down to 19 with Tampa. You're still in the mix to get your guy. So I think that's a very smart move. You end up getting maybe probably another third round pick. Yeah, they have a boatload.
Try to get back in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that. A 1, a 3. So 1265 and 203 for those listening at home for 10. Let's see. They're not interested in trading for this pick.
So for the sake of the simulation, I'll say they did the trade. Because I think Houston would absolutely be interested in this.
And they take JSN.
So Houston's on the clock. They would definitely take JSN, right? To give with CJ Stroud. I mean, excuse me, for Will Levis makes so much sense. You got to get another receiver in there now that Brandon Cooks is gone. So the Eagles move down. There's enough options there at 12. You move down 2 spots, collect another third, get back into the 4th through 6th rounds where you don't have a selection there. I like that trade a lot. Tennessee right in front of Philadelphia here. This is a tough one. I think they lost Taylor Lewan, Gino. I don't know that the
Skronsky makes a
quarterbacks are
boatload
gone.
of sense.
Skronsky is the best player
And
available.
they love
it
those
makes
guard
sense.
tackle type guys. I mean,
Yeah, the Dennis Kelly types.
yeah, exactly. The guys that are that swing type of player. And I think it makes
Yeah.
a boatload of sense. Whoever they run there, I mean, Malik Willis, if he does get the job, like you won't want somebody to protect
Right.
his blind side, hopefully. So that should be Skronsky. And then you're on the board again. And
Yeah,
Lou,
let's see,
I
Gino.
love,
So for the Eagles, I mean,
love the Gonzalez, but I think Nolan Smith is going to be the pick. Like
I agree.
I think we've mocked him a couple times, and people are like, "Oh, that's way too high," but it makes so much sense. Like
I don't think it's high.
on
I don't think
trade.
it's that high, Gino. I love the explosiveness, the Georgia connection, the edge rushing depth, which they want to have, like they did last year. Brandon Graham is at the end of his career, and he reminds them a lot of Hassan Riddick, who they clearly believe in and was elite last year. So, yeah, I would pick Christian Gonzalez, as would you. I like Kalijah Kancey, even Brian Branch, Bijan Robinson. There's a lot of good options, but I agree. I think it would be Nolan Smith.